Welcome back to my channel. My chair is squeaking, so try and ignore that throughout the video. So you guys haven't seen me since before eclipse season. So after eclipse season, life was life and pretty hard. Life does life sometimes, but when life is life and hard. So I am back. Hopefully I'm back properly now. But yeah. It's been a while. So welcome back to my channel. I'm Celestial Tree. I'm a professional astrologer, intuitive reader, and soul psychologist. Why am I out of breath? Anyway, today is going to be a little bit of a different video. Today I'm going to be explaining the basics of how to read a birth chart. We're going to be exploring some of the things that you look for when you first pull up your birth chart, because sometimes pulling a birth chart can be quite confusing. Each chart is unique and it holds a unique energy to it. So we're going to be chatting about the main things to sort of focus on when you're when you first pull the chart and you first look at it, like what are you looking for basically. So this video will hopefully be useful to those who are curious about their charts, and if you haven't studied astrology, or if you're not well versed in, because astrology is a language, if you're not well versed in the language of astrology, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I'm hoping that this will provide a little bit of clarity and act kind of like a roadmap to, well, for those who are looking to learn a little bit more about their natal charts. Obviously, when you're sitting down with a professional astrologer, like I have clients that are into astrology, but when they pull their birth chart, they're like, I don't know what I'm looking at. But I also have clients that are like, I don't know what you're talking about, basically. So yeah, hopefully this is going to be a little bit of a roadmap, a helpful video when it comes to looking at your chart for the first time. So before I get started, gentle reminder that if you'd like a reading from me, you can book with me on my website at celestialhealingrealm.com. And remember to subscribe to my channel. I know I've been gone for a while, but yeah, subscribe to my channel. It is a new channel. I'm still kind of getting used to the lay of the land, so I usually post about spiritual tips and astrology updates and stuff like that. So yeah, just make sure that you guys are subscribing. So before we talk about the ins and outs of reading a birth chart, we kind of need to talk about what a birth chart actually is. So essentially your birth chart is a snapshot of the celestial heavens at the time of birth. So it's a reflection of the energies that are present within you and present within your life path as well. It's kind of like a celestial roadmap. So it holds your passions, it holds your pains, and it holds your potential all in one space. And it's a very powerful thing to view and dive deep into. Obviously, people go their whole lives without looking at their birth charts, but people that do look at their birth charts and look into their birth charts and do a bit more of a deeper dive can really see the benefits of doing so. Some astrologers refer to birth charts as a set of celestial instructions, which I quite like that definition. It really resonates with me because it shows us the energies that are present, but it also gives us clues on how to mediate challenging energies as well. So it's really useful. And there's also, your birth chart also holds the sort of unique ways that work best for you when it comes to mediating some of the things that we do go through in life. So what is fascinating about birth charts as well is that there are no two birth charts that are the same. So even with twins, two twins can have the same planet, same placements within a chart, but the way those energies show up for them individually can be very, very different. Before I get into the nitty-gritty, I do want to express this because I feel like it's an important point to make. You're not a product of your birth chart. Whether your Venus is in Pisces or your moon is in Scorpio, these placements and points are a reflection of energy that's already present within you. Your birth chart is kind of like holding up a mirror. So a lot of clients come to me and they're like, well, why is this happening? Why do I feel like this at this point in my life, etc.? And like I said before, millions of people go through their lives not knowing the details of their birth chart, and they still go through the polarizing ups and downs of life. So when you're pulling your birth chart, try not to think of it as the reason why things are the way that they are in your life. So for example, if you grew up in a household that was very centered around things like performance, and your worth was tied to your performance, a lot of people can probably relate to that. You might be growing up, going through your life feeling burnt out, feeling unworthy, scared of failure, things like that. And then when you come to an astrologer, they might see that your Chiron is located in the 6th house of work and performance, and also health as well. So the astrologer might be like, hey, is this energy of feeling unworthy or feeling not good enough showing up for you in your life? Because I can see that Chiron is present in that 6th house space. Let's talk about that, and then find ways to mediate those feelings and kind of build new narratives. So you might feel the urge to be like, so I'm like this because my Chiron is in my 6th house. No, you would have been like this whether or not you became aware that Chiron was in that 6th house space anyway. Chiron being in the 6th house is a reflection of that energy. Like that's what I was saying about it being like holding up a mirror. So I wanted to make that point because I always see people give a lot of power over to astrology, when astrology is just a language that, when studied, can kind of help us learn a little bit more about the energies that are already present within our lives. So I hope that makes sense. Can you tell my Chiron is in the 6th house? I'm like, I hope that makes sense. The 6th house is also to do with like perfection and stuff like that. So yeah, let's move on to our actual birth chart. So in terms of how you see your birth chart, I will always sort of encourage people to use astro.com when pulling their birth chart. I feel like there are other ways to calculate your birth chart, but that's the one that I typically use for myself and for clients and stuff. You need to be able to enter the date of birth, your date of birth, location of birth, and your time of birth as well. If you don't know your exact birth time, I would check if you were born in the evening or in the morning, and then I would adjust that and opt for like 6 a.m, 12 p.m, 6 p.m, etc. And if you can't get that information, then I would just use midday. That's what I do. But keep in mind your houses, angles, and your rising sign might be a little bit off if you're not aware of your time of birth. The planets will more or less be the same, so yeah, you'll be fine if you don't know your exact birth time. I'm not going to talk about house systems in this video because I will literally be here all day. I already talk a lot, so so I'll be here all day. But what I will say is that when I started pulling charts years ago, I started off using Placidus, which is quite an old house system. And then after doing a little bit more research and working with sort of my first set of clients in that first couple of years, I now use whole sign, and I've been using whole sign for most of my career as an astrologer. So try them both out, see which one feels right for you is what I would encourage. So the first thing that you're going to want to look at before you look at your placements is something that we refer to as hemispheric emphasis. So there are 4 divisions on your chart. You have the Eastern Hemisphere, which is where your rising sign is. So where you can see the first and the last 3 houses. First 3 houses, last 3 houses. And then you have your Western Hemisphere where your descendant is. So opposite the ascendant, and that's on the other side. I'm doing this because it helps me visualize what I'm talking about. So I would encourage you to have a look at how many planets are located on the east or the west. Just the planets, ignore the nodes and the other points and stuff like that for now. If a majority of those planets are in the Eastern Hemisphere, near the ascendant or rising sign, this could indicate that you are very good at self-governing, governing yourself. You might be a little bit more initiatory and centered around like the self. So not the most important, but a very important part of your life is yourself, which is fantastic. If majority of your planets are on the other side, then you might be a little bit less self-oriented. You might tend to consider the needs of others more. And you might be a little bit more receptive rather than initiatory, if that makes sense. So neither one is good or bad. But what's interesting is that those with more planets in the Eastern Hemisphere, within this life cycle, one of the biggest lessons actually comes from learning how to consider others, and being less self-oriented. And then if most of your planets are on that Western Hemisphere, then it's vice versa. One of your biggest lessons in life is actually learning how to prioritize yourself and put yourself at the center of what it is that you're doing. So yeah, if you have Eastern Hemisphere dominance, then you might already know how to initiate and make things happen for yourself. But there is a deeper lesson there when it comes to being able to consider others. So yeah, that is the Eastern and the Western Hemisphere. It's kind of the same sort of thing with the Northern and Southern Hemisphere. So interestingly, the Southern Hemisphere is actually the top half of your chart. And the Northern Hemisphere is actually the bottom half. Don't ask me why. I can't remember the name of the astrologer right now, but years ago when I was studying, I remember hearing that the northern part, I'm doing this, the northern part, which is down there, is kind of like the roots of a tree. So if you have a lot of planets down in the northern part, then you might be a little bit more grounded, you might be a little bit more private and kind of stable in who you are, what it is that you want and what it is that you want to do. Whereas Southern Hemisphere emphasis is kind of like the tops of the tree. So the root is like grounded and stable. And the top of the tree is kind of like blowing in the wind. Kind of at the whim of the wind, depending on how strong the wind is. So if you've got lots of planets in the Southern Hemisphere up there, then you might be a little less grounded. You might be a little bit more out there, a little bit more sociable, a little bit less concerned with traditional notions of stability. So that is kind of the first thing that you want to look at when you're pulling your birth chart is hemisphere emphasis. Where are the most amount of planets? And there are some charts out there that when you pull them, planets are kind of like all over the place. That's fine. You're not like abnormal if you have scattered planets everywhere. So yeah, next we're going to look a little bit more closely about English celestial. Next we're going to look more closely at placements within the chart. And one of my favorite ways to remember the formula of how to look at these is if you think of the planet itself kind of like an actor or a player if you play video games like me. But the planet is the player. So we use the example of the sun. So the sun, the player, the sun is your driving force. It is your ego, it's your identity, it's your outer world. It's the way that you shine, essentially. So if the planet is the player, in this case, the sun, then the sign that the sun is in is the costume that it wears. So if your sun is located in Aries and the archetype of Aries would be, when we think about Aries, we think about leadership, we think about bravery, being brave, we're talking about taking action to benefit the self. So if your sun is wearing the costume of Aries, that is kind of how it would show up. If your sun's wearing the costume of Aquarius, for example, we will kind of picture the sun shining through things like unconventionality. I said it, I did it. Through deep wisdom. Aquarius is the water bearer, it holds the wisdom of Pisces. If the sun is wearing the costume of Scorpio, then the sun is shining through the lens of, when we think about Scorpio, we think about exploring the depths of humanity. So that could be through research, through getting to the bottom of things, and so on and so forth. So another example would be Venus, the player. Venus is the planet of love. So if Venus is wearing the costume of Pisces, then you might love creatively. You might express love through forms of art and music. If your Venus is in Capricorn, then you might express love through things like competence. So that's an example of kind of the formula that I tend to follow. So where do these energies play out? So the houses in your birth chart can be seen as the stage or the arena. So if you have Venus, the player, in the costume of Cancer, then obviously you're loving through Cancerian means, so nurturing, Venus and Cancer values building, security. If you have that in the fourth house of home, then you might be somebody who builds a comforting and secure home environment as best you can. So making sure your doors are locked, making sure your house is warm. These energies obviously will show up differently for different people. No two placements are the same. So another example, if you have Mars, which is the planet of desire and action, Mars is the player in the costume of Virgo, then Virgo is the perfectionist. Then if that Mars in Virgo is in the arena or the house, the 10th house, I was going to say stage, the arena or the stage being the 10th house, then you might be a perfectionist. The 10th house rules over like career and stuff. So you might be a perfectionist at work or in your career, and you might take action, Mars, to make sure that your work performance is the best that it can be. So I hope that makes sense. That's like a little trick to remember how to formulate your interpretation of your own birth chart based on the placements that you're looking at. So yeah, it would definitely be worth looking into some of these energies in your chart and how they show up in your life. Let me know in the comments what you come across. Even if it's basic, the thing with astrology is that it's so, people like to kind of like see it as something that is quite fun and quirky, which it is, but it's also very complex. So yeah. If you do pull up your chart after this video, let me know in the comments of what you find. So now we're going to briefly talk about aspects in your chart. Aspects is like, it's like, the reason I'm talking about aspects is because I don't want to talk just about planets, points, placements, and houses and things like that. I actually want to go a bit more in depth. So when you pull your birth chart and you see all these lines and all these grids at the bottom, you might be like, what the hell? What is all this? So I'm going to break down the main aspects that you will probably see in the birth chart. So you have sort of soft aspects and you also have hard aspects in the chart. So we'll talk about some of the softer aspects. If you have two planets or points that are in a trine or a sextile, trine or sextiles in the chart indicates that there is harmony or synergy between the energies that this aspect is between. So if it's Mars and Neptune, if it's the Sun and Pluto, it indicates some type of like synergy. So wherever that trine is present, it could mean that that type of energy between those two planets comes naturally for you. It could signify also an innate gift or an ability that you already have. So you're kind of like, I do that without even thinking about it. This is especially true for trines. I think with sextiles, some astrologers like to say that it's like two planets or points are like having sex, which is sorry, which is so funny to me. But it just means that the energies are compatible, is how I put it. So yeah, it means that there's a strong positive potential there. Now, with harder aspects like squares and oppositions, which are usually categorized as red lines, so trines and sextiles are kind of blue, and then squares and oppositions are usually red. That indicates disharmony, and it also indicates challenges between the 2 points that you're looking at. So these might be areas where there's some tensions or there's some stress. And the energies of these planets and points that are in oppositions and squares can signify a little bit of like an awkwardness. So you know how when I was saying about a trine, you're like, oh, I do that. I didn't even know I did that. I just do it well. This is like the opposite. It's like tension, it's awkwardness, it doesn't feel natural, you know. So it is also important to note that although these aspects are seen as challenging, these are the things that will show up for you as maybe difficult lessons. They will keep showing up until you get it, as lessons do. So they will show up time and time again for you to be able to grow from. So, right, this video is getting long now, so I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to wrap it up there. If you guys have any questions, please drop them in the comments, and I'm happy to answer them. Or if you're extra curious, then I can leave some helpful resources in the description box. There's a couple of books that are quite easy to read when you're first starting out, kind of looking into birth charts and looking into astrology in general. So that you guys can explore your birth charts and dive deeper into those energies if you like. If you need any further help, don't hesitate to book a reading with me. Then I'm more than happy to discuss birth charts. It's like my favorite thing to do. So yeah, that's all for today, guys. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And also follow me on TikTok and Instagram. They're both linked in the description box. I say linked. They'll be in there. Whether there'll be a link, I don't know. But yeah, do message me or send me an email if you have any questions. Happy healing!